Hi everyone. This is my attempt to tell my tracheotomy and ventilator story. The ups and downs, good and bad. Here's my story. Why would someone with ALS want to get a tracheotomy? You get a trach when your respiratory muscles weaken, causing severe breathing difficulty, or the inability to clear lung secretions, to provide a secure airway. When using a breathing mask is no longer sufficient, it's time for a trach. It prolongs your life after non-invasive methods fail. Even though my ALS started in my hands and arms, eventually, my progression evolved into my breathing. The arch of my nose was raw due to my breathing mask, and the leaking irritated my eyes. It was common to aspirate on saliva, and I was always tired. When I was using my mask 24 hours a day, I knew it was time. If your respiratory vital capacity percent is low when you get a feeding tube, sometimes they want to do a tracheotomy at the same time, due to liability, even if you're not ready for one. But the biggest reason I got a trach, I still had 2 kids in school. I wanted to see them graduate, to feel I had completed my parental duty. I still loved life, and I wasn't ready to die. I had to decide, where am I going to draw the line? When is enough enough? But after 11 years, I'm still here. What recommendations people should have in place before they get a tracheotomy? Getting a trach can be a long recovery for some. I recommend learning how to use a communication chart or a communication device. Get a system using your eyebrows and eye gestures to say yes, no, or when you need something. It's good to have an alarm bell button if you have mobility in your fingers. I use an elephant trumpeting sound on my communication device. My wife just loves when I call her this way. Getting a trach is a decision the whole family needs to be involved in. Make sure your family and doctors are on board with your decision. Don't be surprised if some aren't. It's good to have a will, power of attorney, and a DNR in place. Have a home inspection by your ventilator supplier, so there's no surprises. When my supplier inspected my home while I was in the hospital, they determined that my home had grounding problems, and the electrical outlets were too far. Luckily, we had a friend that was an electrician with his own business, and he made the necessary repairs before I got home. Have a backup plan in place, if you need to leave your home due to weather, earthquake or fire. It's a good idea to have a backup generator if the power goes out. I once used a cheap Chinese generator for 3 days during a power outage. Have caregivers and transportation lined out. Know how to use your Hoyer lift, and have a horseshoe split leg sling that puts you in the sitting position while being transferred, and take it to the hospital. Hospitals use a sling that wraps you up like a burrito, not in a sitting position. Have a plan for dealing with anxiety, whether it be medication or meditation. I recommend getting some type of therapy help for your kids and grandkids before and after your tracheotomy. Trust me, I learned the hard way. What did you go through when you got a trach at the hospital? I showed up at the hospital. They transferred me from my power chair to the hospital bed. After a short wait, they roll you into the operating room, where a full surgical staff was present. They put me under, and in a split second, I woke up in a recovery room. My wife instructed the staff where to put my communication device, so when I woke up, I could communicate and ask questions. Once I was in my room, my wife was able to set up my communication device, so I could speak. I was surprised that the staff, in the Cedars-Sinai ICU, had never seen an eye gaze communication device. Having the ability to communicate with personnel, made my trach operation easier. Plus, my room turned out to be a good hiding place for the staff, because we could engage in small talk. I was surprised that after 4 days, the hospital was ready to release me. I was expecting to be there at least a week, maybe longer. On my way home from the hospital, I was transported in an ambulance for a 3-hour drive to my home. I had my communication device on my lower chest, and was able to speak my needs. We actually watched a movie during the drive. Remember, when you leave the hospital, you should have 2 portable ventilators, your primary vent, and a backup. What was your recovery like after you got a trach? It took me about a month to heal, recover, and get used to the trach. When we got to our multi-million-dollar mansion in California, just kidding, our real home, my wife and I were extremely overwhelmed. It's something new and scary. The morning after I came home, a drunk driver wrecked into my handicapped van, in front of our home. It was wrecked, and took 3 months for it to be repaired. It was crazy going to my appointments without my van, and my pulmonary doctor even sent his office staff to my home. After a few weeks, everyone gets into a routine of maintaining my trach, and suctioning. I had problems with my breathing settings on my ventilator, so I had my local respiratory therapist adjust my settings, which was a big improvement. The biggest problem with ventilator settings is respiratory therapists simply use generic settings based on your age, sex, height, and weight. Then they take a blood gas test, which determines your oxygen and carbon dioxide levels in your blood, and make additional adjustments. Now, the problem with all this is that everyone is different, usually requiring additional ventilator adjustments after the hospital. The first month was the hardest, and I said, "What in the hell was I thinking?" But as time goes by, it gets easier. What are the biggest challenges living with a trach? It's a big decision. When people ask questions, they want me to sway them to a yes or no answer, but I can't. After all these years, I'm still on the fence if I should have gotten it. Most people have already lost the ability to speak by the time you're ready to get a trach. If your voice is weak, you'll probably lose the ability to speak after the surgery. With the trach, you need 24-hour care, reduced mobility, constant suctioning, and the constant fear that something might go wrong. I've had 2 ventilators take a dump with no alarms. One was at night while sleeping. You need to take all your equipment, backup equipment, and extra supplies when you go anywhere. Things like your backup ventilator, portable suction machine, cough assist, replacement hoses, ambu bag, and even an extra trach. My wife uses a fold-up shopping basket with wheels, for my equipment. From behind, she controls my power chair with one hand, and pulls my equipment basket with the other. Sometimes, I'll play a train horn on my communication device just to embarrass her. I often tell people, we've simplified ALS, and do it on a budget because my wife is my only caregiver. When you have a trach, if suctioning doesn't get the fluid buildup in my lungs, I'll use the cough assist. When my nose gets plugged up, my wife suctions my nose. ALS seems to be battle of saliva and snot, especially after getting a trach. I turned out to be the guinea pig in my area, because only 10% of people diagnosed with ALS get a trach. If I had to do it all over again, I would have done things differently. The most heart-wrenching experience was with my children. My 3 daughters, instead of embracing their roles with my ALS, chose to distance themselves from my journey. Similarly, my 3 stepchildren felt that my ALS had stolen their mother away from them, and they harbored deep resentment towards me. Something no one mentions about getting a tracheotomy is Pseudomonas. 1 in 5 people who get a tracheotomy develops a Pseudomonas infection in the hospital. What is Pseudomonas? It's a bacterial infection you get in the hospital. It colonizes in your trach area, and you can't get rid of it, no matter how many antibiotics you take. It gives you cold-like symptoms, making you need more suctioning, and nasal congestion. Before I got a trach, I never heard of it, and it adds additional complications. After you have had a trach for a while it settles down, but you do get flare-ups now and then. What is required daily while living with a trach? In the beginning, trach care is by the book. It consists of replacing the inner cannula, the curved tube inside your trach, cleaning around the trach with peroxide, and putting new dressing around the area. We replaced our ventilator filter and hoses every week. My cuff needs air from time to keep it inflated. A cuff is the balloon at the end of your trach. You keep it inflated to block your windpipe from everything else. If your cuff is low, it can leak, causing gurgling in your throat. Most people use a small syringe to add air to the cuff, and they go by feel. I use what's called a cufflator. A cufflator is a handheld pressure gauge and the handle is a pump to add pressure to your cuff. They are expensive, but takes the guesswork out of cuff inflation. You have a humidifier that you need to check and fill with water. I generally wake up during the night to get suctioned. A common misconception about trach care is that it must be done by a medical professional. The truth is, anyone can do it, it's not hard. People just overthink it. My alarms on my vent aren't that sensitive, because they would always go off. I've progressed to the point that I'm on autopilot. My wife says I've beaten ALS, and ALS is now a lifestyle. What do you go through getting your trach replaced? Everyone is different during their trach change. I get my trach replaced every 3 months, and until 3 years ago, my trach changes were the worst. I used the older hard plastic Shiley trach, and it was hard to change. I got good at holding my breath, and would jokingly tell people, instead of being a heavy-duty mechanic, I should have been a pearl diver. A few years ago, they upgraded my trach to the new flexible Shiley one made from soft silicone, and it was a game changer. The replacements now take a few seconds with no holding my breath or pain. It's quick and easy. My wife assists the doctor, and uses our portable suction machine to keep saliva and secretions to a minimum. Suctioning is when someone uses a small tube, and runs it down through my trach into my lungs, and suction the fluid out while pulling it out. I also have to have my mouth and nose suctioned. It's done with a similar setup that dentists use. I originally had my pulmonary doctor change my trach in a hospital setting, but switched to my ENT, ear, nose, throat doctor in his office. Some people get their trach replaced at home, but my wife would rather go in. Recovery is about a day. My wife has changed my trach once, so she would know how to change it in case of an emergency. Is living with a trach expensive? No matter if you're rich or poor, you'll need to make life changes financially. The wealthy can afford insurance, and the poor can get on their state's Medicaid. It's the middle class that struggles financially. As for myself, after I left work and my wife had to quit her job, after I could no longer take care of myself, finances became difficult. We had to shuffle vehicles, maxed credit cards, and lower our cost of living. Our financial situation became desperate, and we considered pulling the plug. Luckily, we found solutions in the system, becoming the working disabled. We then were able to make ends meet, even though our financial lifestyle had changed significantly. Are you able to do things after getting a tracheotomy? The answer is yes. Most people after getting a trach go to football, baseball, and basketball games. I even go to concerts and day trips. I still do these things, go to the movies and restaurants. Just because you get a trach doesn't mean your life is over, but it is more difficult. I go on Zoom calls, text, and email friends. God keeps me busy with little projects and things to do. Speaking of keeping busy, a few years ago, I appeared in a PBS documentary titled Matter of Mind, My ALS, that kept me busy for weeks. I never would have imagined being in an ALS documentary. I try to raise awareness and support others affected by this devastating disease. I hope this presentation helped someone in the ALS community, and I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the ALS United of Illinois for selecting me for this presentation, One Man's Journey with ALS Ventilation. Love recognizes no barriers, it jumps all hurdles, leaps all fences, and tears down impenetrable walls, to reach its final destination, which is hope. Thank you, and God bless.